Before we begin, the name is placed on the top right side of the screen. The grand hall glows under golden candlelight, the air thick with the scent of roasted meats and aged wine. Nobles move in careful synchrony, exchanging pleasantries with smiles that hold more calculation than warmth. Viscount Milji stands tall, his posture rigid with authority, exuding the effortless poise of a man who has spent years perfecting the art of noble gatherings. He watches over his daughter, Elena, with sharp, scrutinizing eyes, reminding her yet again of the evening's significance. Her fiancé, Hans, is in attendance and everything. Her appearance, her behavior, must be flawless. Elena nods, though her expression betrays a deep longing to be anywhere else. Perhaps home, curled up in bed, this girl wants to scroll reels. Milji's gaze shifts, zeroing in on a particular family across the hall, the Leightons. Duke Leighton stands at the center of the attention, but beside him is a woman far more interesting. The former Duchess of Leighton, Wilhelmina. The subject of countless rumors, she is a young woman from a fallen noble house, sold off into marriage to secure a future. Her husband, the former duke, had conveniently died almost immediately after their wedding, leaving her not just a widow but an enigma. Milji greets the duke with the effortless elegance of a seasoned nobleman, his voice steady and firm. He expects Elena to do the same, but before his daughter can even attempt a curtsy, she suddenly sways. A wave of nausea washes over her, and it takes everything in her to remain upright. The realization crashes down. She has starved herself for 2 days just to stand out at this banquet, and now her body is staging a full-scale rebellion. Milji, horrified by her sudden wavering, snaps at her to compose herself, his voice carrying the quiet menace of a man who refuses to tolerate public embarrassment. But before the situation can escalate further, Wilhelmina moves. In a swift, fluid motion, she drapes a warm cloak over Elena's shoulders, her expression shifting from distant amusement to genuine concern. The weight of Wilhelmina's hand on her shoulder is steady, her eyes sharp with worry. How could someone this weak even stand in the cold, let alone survive the suffocating constraints of a corset and heels? It is baffling. It is infuriating. The sight of Elena, practically reduced to skin and bones, unsettles Wilhelmina in a way she does not expect. Elena, caught off guard, is jolted back to a memory, her grandmother. The warmth of the gesture, the quiet concern, the sense of familiarity in the way Wilhelmina regards her, it is something she has not felt in a long time. Wilhelmina, meanwhile, finds herself drowning in her own recollections. The sight of Elena, weak and struggling, is too familiar. It reminds her of herself. Before marriage she had been nothing more than a desperate young woman, clawing her way through life, scraping together whatever money she could just to survive. Debt-ridden, exhausted, always one misstep away from ruin, hunger had been a constant companion. That life had ended the day a man arrived at her door, stating that he would take her away. Just like that, her last name had become Leighton. It was a powerful name, belonging to the most influential noble house in the West, but it meant little when the man she had been promised to had already buried 4 wives before her. Holy cow, this man is a 100% misogynist sitting in the carriage on her way to the estate. She had braced herself for the worst. Surely, a man with such a history could only be the embodiment of misery, if not outright danger. Running away was not an option, but she had prepared herself for a life of endurance. Then, upon arriving at the estate, she received news that would change everything. The Duke was dead. A heart attack, they said. He had died just the day before. There had been no wedding ceremony, yet she was still expected to attend the funeral as his widow. It was a strange introduction to married life, if one could even call it that. With the duchy thrown into chaos, no one had time to acknowledge the new bride, widow, whatever title fit best. Without any formal welcome or introduction to the estate, she had been swiftly cast away to a secluded residence. 2 months have passed since then. Wilhelmina finds unexpected solace in her quiet isolation. She confides in Anna, a servant who has become something of a companion, that she prefers it this way. The grandeur of the estate holds no real appeal to her. After years of being crushed under the weight of debt, this secluded life feels like a luxury. Anna, deeply moved by Wilhelmina's resilience, often expresses concern over her standing within the household. With the former duke gone and the new duke preoccupied with securing his position, there is little certainty regarding Wilhelmina's future. The year-end banquet is approaching, bringing with it the arrival of an important guest from the imperial family, which only heightens the unpredictability of the situation. Wilhelmina, however, is less concerned with noble politics and more focused on practicality. She knows that once things settle, she will likely be cast out. No sane noble family would entrust real power to a woman with no connections or influence. If that happens, she figures she will head to the capital, start a business, or perhaps even travel. The idea of securing some form of financial power before her inevitable dismissal lingers at the back of her mind. Her thoughts are interrupted by a sudden knock at the door. The butler enters, his demeanor carefully neutral as he informs her that Her Grace has requested an audience. Wilhelmina, caught off guard by the phrasing, immediately recognizes that Her Grace refers to the current Duchess of Leighton, Helene Leighton. The request is unusual, and as the butler escorts her down the long corridors of the estate, he adds, with careful words, that the meeting concerns her future residence. He then, with an air of hesitance, advises her to prepare her luggage. Wilhelmina stiffens at the implication. The request to mind her luggage feels like a warning. Perhaps this is it. Perhaps the family has finally decided to send her away. The situation is complicated, but Wilhelmina still holds a higher social standing than Helene, simply by virtue of hierarchy. As the widow of the former duke, she technically ranks above the new duchess, yet Helene has still chosen to acknowledge her status with respect rather than hostility. It is impressive, really. Despite being younger than her own stepson, Helene embodies the perfect noblewoman, graceful, composed, and deeply committed to upholding the dignity of the family name. As Wilhelmina steps into the grand chamber, she can't help but wonder, does Helene value manners more than pride? Then, as if to answer her silent question, Helene turns to her with the utmost dignity, greets her with the warmth of a seasoned noblewoman, and without hesitation calls her mother. Helene's sudden intrusion makes Wilhelmina wonder if she is not making her uncomfortable. It feels strange to her. Wilhelmina notes aloud that this is their first time meeting, prompting Helene to apologize for contacting her so late. She then gestures for Wilhelmina to take a seat and orders the maid to bring some tea. Helene, a member of the royal family and the esteemed lady of the Duchy of Leighton, possesses all the grace and refinement expected of a noblewoman. She stands out even among the aristocracy, renowned as the star of high society, a role model for noble daughters. With poised elegance, Helene asks Wilhelmina if she has been well. Wilhelmina responds that she has and inquires about Helene in return. As always, Helene replies she has been busy. Wilhelmina ponders the meaning behind Helene's words. Is she subtly implying that she was too occupied to call her sooner? She decides not to take it personally. Then, with a calm yet deliberate tone, Helene states that there is something important to discuss. Wilhelmina, unable to immediately grasp the meaning, hesitantly asks for clarification. Helene then explains they would like Wilhelmina to officially accept a position as a member of the Leighton Duchy. The statement shocks Wilhelmina so much that she momentarily fails to mask her emotions. For a moment, she had braced herself for the opposite, for them to cast her out entirely. Instead, Helene continues, stating that as an official member of the family, they expect her to attend both the year-end and New Year's banquets alongside them. Wilhelmina has never set foot in high society, but even she understands the significance of the Leighton Duchy's year-end banquet. If she were to appear at such an event, regardless of the duchy's influence, the nobility would undoubtedly talk. She recalls something Anna had mentioned. An important royal figure would be attending this year's banquet. If even the duchy considers them a distinguished guest, they must hold an exceptionally high status. A bitter thought crosses Wilhelmina's mind. Have they lost their minds? As much as she loathes admitting it, she knows that she is a disgrace to the Leighton Duchy. Are they extending this offer out of pity, charity? The title of mother-in-law, a position tied to the Leighton family, holds immense power, and she knows they would not grant it to just anyone out of kindness. Then, a sudden realization strikes her. What if the duchy was not the only one involved in making this decision? She recalls something the butler once told her. Helene is unwavering when it comes to hierarchy and tradition. No matter how cold and composed she may appear, Helene values the established order above her personal pride. Could Wilhelmina, then, truly outrank her? It seems impossible. The Leighton family is one of only 2 ducal houses in the empire. The only figure with the authority to pressure them would be the emperor himself. The weight of this thought settles over Wilhelmina, and when she voices it, she can see the slight shift in Helene's expression. It is all but confirmed. This decision was not entirely the duchy's own. The emperor was involved. As Wilhelmina studies Helene's reaction, the pieces begin to fall into place. She recalls that a new emperor ascended the throne just last year, one known to favor the Eastern faction, which played a crucial role in securing his claim. In contrast, the Leighton Duchy leads the Western nobility. The previous emperor's first empress bore the first prince in Helene before passing away, while the current emperor is the son of the second empress. After defeating the first prince, he seized the throne. To him, the Leighton family and Helene, his half-blooded sister, must seem like potential threats. However, the Leighton family wields immense wealth and controls vast territory, their influence deeply rooted in high society. A newly crowned emperor, no matter how ambitious, cannot move against them easily. Tarnishing their reputation or making overt political maneuvers would be difficult unless the previous Duke of Leighton had not suddenly died. Wilhelmina's thoughts race. The death of the former Duke left a vacuum of power, and judging from Helene's response, it is evident that the Emperor has used this opportunity to exert pressure on the family. Now everything starts making sense. The previous Duke was a violent man, one who had murdered 4 of his wives. Yet the Leighton Duchy, the very same family that had brought in a 5th wife, is now attempting to cast her aside. Such blatant hypocrisy and moral corruption would not escape notice. The Emperor, as the ruler overseeing the nobility, now has the perfect justification to intervene. After all, no one but the Emperor himself would have had the audacity to force a fallen noblewoman into the duchy, much less as the previous Duke's widow. In the end, the Leighton Duchy has chosen the safest option. Rather than provoking the Emperor by discarding Wilhelmina, they have decided it is more prudent to keep her close, under their sole control. Even if the Emperor had not directly ordered them to do so, they may have panicked and made this decision on their own. Regardless of the specifics, one thing is clear. This is a testament to how acutely aware they are of the Empire's political landscape. Instead of ensuring her removal, they are now making sure she does not flee. And to Wilhelmina, this entire situation is nothing short of fascinating. She cannot help but think she is actually enjoying this. Wilhelmina believes that what is happening is nothing more than political stirrings. She voices her thoughts aloud, stating that life in the annex is rather good for her and that she does not anticipate any issues moving forward. Since Helene has personally requested her attendance at the banquet, she agrees. However, she lacks many things, and so she turns to Helene for assistance. In reality, Wilhelmina possesses neither a dress nor jewelry. Even someone as unfamiliar with banquets as she is understands that sleepwear is out of the question. She requires Helene's help in acquiring appropriate attire. Helene, grasping the request, inquires whether Wilhelmina needs anything else. Wilhelmina, having heard of the brutal winters in the western region, wishes to prepare accordingly. Helene promptly orders a maid to summon a tailor, but before the command is fully issued, Wilhelmina interjects. The clothing is not for her, she clarifies, but for the children working in the annex. She estimates that nearly 30 outfits are necessary, believing that the servants' clothing is far too thin for the harsh climate. She even wonders whose idea it was to provide such inadequate garments. Anna, one of the servants, frequently visits Wilhelmina's room, always muttering about how cold it is. Helene, somewhat taken aback, asks if Wilhelmina is certain about this request. Wilhelmina, unwavering, confirms her decision without hesitation. Helene is momentarily speechless. Now that Wilhelmina has gained a deeper understanding of how things function in this household, she wonders if Helene had expected her to ask for jewels instead. But Wilhelmina knows that greed leads to ruin. Even if circumstances have shifted in her favor, she remains an outsider with no true ties to the duchy. Overstepping could reduce her to nothing more than a powerless figurehead. Accept whatever kindness the duchy extends, but never take more than necessary. This is the slogan she resolves to follow. Rising from her seat, Wilhelmina prepares to leave. She has a morning appointment, and it is almost time for the little ones to return from the laundry. This world may possess magic, yet no one has invented a washing machine with hot water. As she steps away, she suddenly turns back to Helene and remarks that she is a great daughter-in-law. Helene flinches at the statement, immediately questioning what Wilhelmina means by it. Wilhelmina assures her that these are not empty words, but a genuine compliment. She can see how exhausting it must be to address someone as mother when that title belongs to a person one despises. Only now does she truly understand how strong the lady of this house must be, wearing a mask for the sake of the family while yearning to be left alone. Helene finds herself contemplating Wilhelmina's words. Is she truly just a kind-hearted woman? Dismissing the notion, Helene convinces herself that it cannot be so. Even if Wilhelmina is not actively trying to conceal it, in the brief conversation they have shared, she has already managed to grasp both Leighton's situation and the political landscape surrounding them. Her status may be low, but her ability to assess the situation is undeniable. It leads Helene to wonder, did Wilhelmina major in political science at the academy? Someone so politically perceptive cannot possibly be purely good. It could all be an act. Helene contemplates whether she should consult the butler. He is a close aide brought from the imperial palace, a man who remains unaffected by the empire's shifting tides. However, he is also too kind and fair-minded, not the sort of person useful in handling such situations. Remembering her upcoming meeting with the children, Helene glances at the time. Less than 30 minutes remain, and she has already spent too long pondering Wilhelmina's words. The meeting was scheduled to last an hour, but she will now have to cut it short. As she glances outside, she notices the children wandering about. A frown crosses her face. Why are they outside? She will need to instruct the nanny to enforce a stricter schedule. Drawing the curtains shut, she scoffs, but Wilhelmina's compliment continues to linger in her mind. What had led her to make such a judgment? Wilhelmina's gaze unsettles her. She appears younger than Helene, and yet something about her demeanor suggests otherwise. There is an unsettling sense that Wilhelmina understands far more than she should, as if she can see right through her. Helene does not like this. Not one bit. Wilhelmina's past life unfolds before her eyes. She had once been a teacher, standing in front of eager students who hung onto her every word. One particularly enthusiastic student had gone on a long 30-minute explanation about the differences between regression, transmigration, and reincarnation. At the time, it had felt like nothing more than an overly passionate ramble about common tropes in novels. But now, as she exists in a new world, that knowledge proves unexpectedly useful. Regression, she recalls, means returning to a certain point in one's life while retaining memories of the future. Transmigration involves entering another's body, inheriting both their life and their memories. And reincarnation means being born anew, a fresh life with only the subconscious echoes of the past. Hanna had been reborn as Wilhelmina, carrying over the wisdom of her previous existence. But even that wasn't enough. If only she had been a world history teacher instead of just a regular educator, she might have understood more about human rights, labor conditions, and cultural structures. Even so, she has been able to change the annex schedule as she pleases, granting herself some degree of control over the situation. As she surveys the children, she takes in their small, frail figures. The eldest among them is no more than 10 years old, yet they toil away to earn their keep. It is said that noble families treat their servants more leniently, particularly those under the knights, but these children are stuck in the cycle of labor without any such privileges. Leighton's treatment of his servants is considered relatively good, but that only makes her wonder just how harsh it must be elsewhere. Yet even if she wishes to help, she knows she cannot simply force the duchy to stop employing child labor. Taking away their work means taking away their place in society. It is a larger societal issue, not just a matter of cruel employers. One of the children looks up at her with wary eyes, examining her expression closely. Wilhelmina's face, naturally stern, often gives off an air of coldness. The little girl seems unsettled, as if debating whether to say something. Wilhelmina wonders if her face truly appears that frightening. Brushing the thought aside, she asks if the girl has finished her potatoes and if she would like more. The child shakes her head, saying she is fine. But her expression shifts. There is something she wants to ask. Wilhelmina immediately understands, recognizing the hesitancy in the girl's demeanor. The child remembers sitting on Wilhelmina's lap before, but she hesitates to ask if she can do so again. Before the little girl can struggle with the question any longer, Wilhelmina calls out to her, asking if she wants to sit in her lap. The child's face lights up with a beaming smile as she nods eagerly. Wilhelmina welcomes her without hesitation. As she settles into Wilhelmina's embrace, the girl glances up and asks, with an almost relieved tone, if she is going to live here now. Wilhelmina confirms it, and the child visibly relaxes. These children must have thought she would leave the annex eventually. There is surely plenty of talk about her behind her back. Perhaps she should thank the emperor she muses, if not out of genuine gratitude, then at least for securing her place here. Curious, Wilhelmina asks the little girl what work she has for the day. The child brightens and eagerly explains that today they are pulling weeds. The weeds that grow in autumn are particularly strong, requiring extra effort to remove. She adds, almost proudly, that there is someone who excels at the task, John. The name does not ring any bells. Wilhelmina frowns slightly, certain that she has memorized all the servants' names. Has she somehow overlooked someone? The little girl explains that John is an errand boy, working on daily wages. The gardener had hired him in spring and summer when work was plentiful, but now, as winter approaches, there is less demand, which is troubling for him. The children had even suggested that John work alongside them, but he had refused outright. Wilhelmina wonders why. The girl's face turns serious as she explains, John is afraid of nobles. He fears being whipped for making mistakes, just as he has seen others suffer under his previous masters. The other children have tried to convince him that Wilhelmina is different, but John's past experiences have left him deeply distrustful. Errand boys have little work in the winter. If not for today's wheat pulling, John would have had no way to earn money. Worse yet, he has no parents to rely on. Wilhelmina's thoughts grow heavier. She asks if John lives alone. The girl shakes her head. John has a younger sister, too young to work. He is the only one who earns for them both. Lately, they have had no food. The children whisper about how John and his sister have even resorted to eating tree bark porridge. Wilhelmina glances at the other children, asking if they are friends with John. They all nod eagerly, confirming that John is hardworking, kind, and always helps them even when it's not his responsibility. He seems to be well liked among them. She asks again, does John truly work as hard as they say? The children all nod with certainty. Wilhelmina makes a decision. She happens to need an errand boy for tasks outside the annex. If John is as diligent as they claim, she will meet him herself. On the other side of the estate, John pulls weeds with all his strength. His thin arms tremble slightly from the effort, but he does not stop. Sweat drips down his brow as he stands to catch his breath. He does not trust nobles. His fists clench as old memories surface. Being beaten for leaving behind a single weed, being treated as less than human. Servants are treated like dogs. He knows that if he became a servant, it would improve his situation, but at what cost? If he were to die in the service of some noble, his sister Lily would be left alone. No matter how generous or important this money might be, nothing is more valuable than his life. Yet for now, at least he has work. Taking a deep breath, he returns to the weeds, determined to make the most of the opportunity. But suddenly, he senses a presence. His hands freeze. His eyes lift. Standing before him is Wilhelmina, whom he does not recognize. John thinks that it is not even the middle of winter yet, but Wilhelmina is already wrapped in that big cloak instead of a blanket. He focuses on his task, needing to pull the weeds, and of all places, they are growing exactly where Wilhelmina is sitting. Judging by her appearance, she does not seem like a noble to him. There is no attendant by her side, and something about her feels different. He asks her to move aside so he can clear the weeds, and she quickly apologizes for getting in his way. As he begins pulling them out, his thoughts linger on her presence. She truly does not seem like a noble, yet there is something about her that stands out. His thoughts are interrupted when Wilhelmina suddenly calls out to him, making him flinch. She tells him that she has heard about him from Mermaid, who spoke of his skill in weeding. John humbly responds, rushing off the compliment, but Wilhelmina continues, adding that Mermaid also spoke highly of his intelligence and how he is a great brother. The praise makes him slightly embarrassed, as he is not used to being complimented in such a direct way. Wilhelmina then sits beside him, and John becomes aware of her scent. It is not the overpowering, powdery perfume that noblewomen often wear. Instead, it is a soft, sweet fragrance, like butterflies and herbs, something he has smelled before but cannot quite place. Wilhelmina then asks if he likes potatoes. Without waiting for a response, she takes out some, explaining that while they are not spring potatoes, they still taste delicious. Suddenly, recognition hits him. That scent, he remembers it now. It is the smell of brewing herbs, the aroma of freshly baked bread. It is the comforting scent of home, of a time when his mother and grandmother were still alive. Wilhelmina, still speaking, tells him that if peeling the potatoes is difficult for him, she can help. She also mentions that she has brought cinnamon tea to drink alongside the meal. After a while, as their time together comes to an end, Wilhelmina prepares to leave. She reflects on how pleasant the conversation with John was, though she notices his cautious nature. She had hoped to get closer to him, but he remains somewhat distant. Failing to win him over completely feels like a small defeat, especially for someone in her position as an academy instructor. However, when John asks if he will see her again, there is a flicker of something in his tone. She reassures him with a smile, promising that she will return every Wednesday morning with roasted potatoes. To this, John smiles, and she takes it as a small victory. But Wilhelmina does not know much about what happens outside the castle, particularly in Leighton territory. She realizes that hiring John could be beneficial. He could provide insight into the land she now governs. Now that she is the Duchess of Leighton, it is only right that she understands her people, and in return she can offer John some decent work. The thought of meeting him again next week is something she finds herself looking forward to. Her thoughts are interrupted when she notices the butler approaching. It catches her attention. Why would the head butler of the estate come to the annex? The butler greets her, and she immediately asks why he is here. He delivers a message on behalf of Helene. Wilhelmina sighs, thinking that it seems Helene is quite busy. The butler, ever formal, asks her to forgive Helene with her generosity. But Wilhelmina cannot help but wonder, does this really count as generosity? It is clear to her that Helene has no real intention of getting close to her. Even though her words are polite, her actions speak otherwise. Still, she listens as the butler explains the reason for his visit. In a week's time, there will be a small banquet, a celebration to honor the Margrave's achievements. Since Helene has been summoned to the imperial palace, she will not be able to attend. Wilhelmina immediately understands where this is going. She finishes the butler's sentence for him, stating that they want her to take Helene's place at the banquet. The butler confirms her assumption, explaining that Helene wants her to become familiar with the Western social circle. Wilhelmina notes how they are making it sound like an opportunity rather than a substitution. Regardless, attending such gatherings will help her adjust to her new position. She accepts the proposal, though she knows she does not truly have a choice. They may call it a recommendation, but declining would have consequences. At the very least, as a mere stand-in, she doubts there will be much for her to do. The butler thanks her and informs her that he will arrange for a tailor and a knowledgeable lady to assist her. This piques her curiosity. What exactly does he mean by that? He clarifies that since this is her first time attending a Western social event, it is only natural that she needs to learn the rules. The implication is clear. They do not see her as a proper noblewoman, and it seems they believe she needs training. Wilhelmina is aware that she lacks knowledge of noble customs, so she does not object to learning. However, she sets one condition. She tells the butler to have them come in the afternoon. This surprises him, and he asks why. Her answer is simple. She is sleepy in the morning. Studying first thing in the morning was a habit she followed back in Korea, and she has had enough of it. The scene shifts to an old lady stepping out of the carriage. She is Thai wife of Viscount Roland Thome, most renowned tutor, who has trained countless ladies of the West. It has started her first official event as the Duchess. Viscount Roland, the esteemed author of Modern Etiquette for Noblewomen and a celebrated etiquette instructor, approaches her role with the same precision and discipline that once governed her life as a noblewoman. After the passing of her husband, she chooses not to remarry or continue the family line, but instead dedicates herself to training young noblewomen in the art of grace and decorum. Many have learned under her tutelage, and Wilhelmina is no exception. However, the training is rigorous, spanning 3 days of relentless refinement, where every gesture, posture, and mannerism is scrutinized and perfected. During the session, Roland watches Wilhelmina with a keen eye, correcting her stance with unwavering authority. She instructs her to ensure that her head does not follow her gaze, that her chin remains tucked while keeping the top straight, and that she straightens her chest and shoulders, extending her waist as though her solar plexus is drawing away from her navel. The lesson then shifts to dining etiquette, where Roland demonstrates the correct way to hold the soup plate in her left hand, to scoop from the front, and to bring the soup to her lips without making a sound. If the soup level gets too low, she must delicately lift the plate rather than scrape at the remnants. Moving on to the main course, Roland reminds her that food should always be cut into bite-sized pieces. Should a toast be raised during a banquet, Wilhelmina is instructed to lift her glass to eye level in the direction of the host before partaking. The training is both physically and mentally exhausting. Later that night, as Wilhelmina lies in bed, she reflects on the day's lessons. Becoming the Duchess is proving to be an arduous task, one she had anticipated, yet experiencing it firsthand is another matter entirely. Even so, she finds a small comfort in the fact that Roland's sharp remarks have been fewer than before. This gives her hope that, by tomorrow, she will perform even better, perhaps even flawlessly. With that thought, she drifts into sleep. The following morning, during tea, Roland acknowledges Wilhelmina's progress. She praises the young noblewoman's ability to maintain her composure and remain unfazed by minor errors, calling it an admirable trait. Wilhelmina receives the compliment with humility, attributing her progress to Roland's exceptional guidance. Though Roland acknowledges that there are still areas for improvement, she reassures Wilhelmina that since the Duchess is not required to dance at the upcoming celebration, it will not pose an issue. Wilhelmina, who does not have a dance partner, finds this arrangement convenient. All that remains is for her to greet guests, sit at the table, and pass the time through the meal. As Roland continues speaking, she suddenly begins to cough, her complexion noticeably pale. Wilhelmina quickly takes note of this, recognizing signs of fatigue that she had previously overlooked. Without hesitation, she suggests postponing the lesson, to which Roland, though reluctant, eventually agrees. Assisting her to a chair, Wilhelmina disappears momentarily before returning with a round cloth in her hands. She hands it to Roland, prompting a curious inquiry as to its purpose. Wilhelmina explains, without embellishment, that a heated stone is wrapped inside the fabric. If it becomes too hot, Roland can switch it between her hands or wrap it in another handkerchief. Roland, still puzzled, questions why Wilhelmina has given this to her. Without speaking, Wilhelmina simply places the warm stone in her instructor's hands. She has noticed, even during lessons, that Roland frequently removes her gloves and rubs her fingers, an unconscious habit of someone suffering from the cold. While others might have ignored such details, Wilhelmina, ever observant, does not. She could have simply advised Roland to remove her gloves, but etiquette is as deeply ingrained in her as discipline is in Roland. Roland accepts the unexpected gesture and, upon realizing its warmth, acknowledges its effectiveness. She finds it to be a rather unique hand warmer, unlike any she has used before. Wilhelmina then remarks that the stone was found by the attendants, and she merely wrapped it in cloth. Roland, inspecting the fabric, inquires whether Wilhelmina had purchased it. However, Wilhelmina calmly replies that she made it herself. At this, Roland's curiosity deepens. Wilhelmina did not create it for herself, but for the attendants. The explanation follows naturally. During her time at an academy for elementary students, Wilhelmina had managed everything on her own. Sewing was among the many skills she picked up, whether it was mending torn clothing or embroidering children's names onto their indoor shoes. She recalls how, when her autumn comes, the children would often complain about their hands aching from washing clothes in the cold. To ease their discomfort, she had made similar hand warmers, though what started as a simple task soon turned into producing 20 of them. Roland, though initially taken aback, cannot help but be impressed. Wilhelmina, however, remains oblivious to why this is remarkable. Surely these are skills anyone can learn. Roland, however, knows otherwise. Embroidery is considered a refined and delicate craft, yet few noblewomen would think to use it for the benefit of their attendants. As their conversation continues, Roland notices that the tea before her is a blend of ginger and lemon. She questions whether Wilhelmina requested it specifically. Wilhelmina, in response, urges her instructor to drink it before it gets cold. Ginger is an expensive herbal ingredient, but she has a keen eye for details. She points out that Roland does not merely dislike the cold, she is from the western region, where autumn feels like the onset of winter. From the layers of clothing Roland wears, it is evident how much she struggles with the climate here. Wilhelmina, eager to relate, shares her own difficulties. She, too, detests the cold. Poor circulation and sensitivity to cold are miserable afflictions, one she understands well. While she cannot claim to comprehend the pain of losing a husband, she can at least share in the battle against the bitter chill. Roland listens intently, then smiles, lifting the cup to take a sip of her tea. The warmth soothes her throat, and for the first time in 3 days, she allows herself a moment of reprieve. With a measured breath, she finally speaks again. Now that the 3-day training has concluded, it is time for her to give her final assessment of Wilhelmina's progress. Roland speaks to Wilhelmina, reflecting on her decades of teaching etiquette to young ladies, how to hold a fan, which hand must remain free while walking with a gentleman, the kind of alcohol one should drink, and the appropriate beverages for different occasions. These are the things she has spent her life teaching. Wilhelmina, sitting before her, can only wonder why she is bringing this up now, as she was supposed to be telling her the results of her evaluation. But Roland, after so many years, has come to realize that true education cannot be taught solely through words. Wilhelmina now begins to understand what Roland is trying to tell her. Looking back at her own past as an instructor, she feels that what she did was light in comparison. What she used to do was worrying, but what Roland does is anguish. People assume that Roland has spent her years merely teaching young ladies how to talk and behave with grace. But what she truly taught was how to become a noble, how to bear the duties and the demeanor of those who stand above others. As Roland stands up, Wilhelmina instinctively rises as well. Taking her hand, Roland states that in that sense, Wilhelmina lacks nothing. She possesses a kindness that Roland believes she could never teach. Over the past 3 days, Roland has observed all the small but meaningful actions Wilhelmina has done. The way the maids look at her, the anxious eyes of the attendants peeking through the door whenever she is scolded, and Wilhelmina's unwavering kindness towards them. As the lady of the house, she already possesses great virtues. Therefore, Roland concludes her education, stating that with etiquette that comes from the heart, Wilhelmina will be able to overcome any hurdle. The banquet of the Margrave is a surprisingly small-scale event, with only 40 guests in attendance. Given the status of a Margrave, this is unusually modest. A Western Margrave should come from a lineage as prestigious as a ducal household, and they are also a knightly family, deeply respected by swordsmen. If Leighton carries the image of an honorable elder, then the Margrave is more like a warrior who built his name through sheer skill with the sword. Wilhelmina cannot understand why an event like this is being held on such a small scale. Officially, the West is in a mourning period. However, officially only means so much. No one truly seems to be in mourning. It has not even been 2 full months since the previous duke's death, yet the atmosphere suggests that his passing was hardly lamented. If anything, it seems the late duke was not well loved. Wilhelmina finds this to be acceptable. After all, she herself wore mourning clothes for only a week. In this place, a widow is expected to wear mourning attire for at least 1 to 2 years. Helene, on the other hand, has endured much, suffering under a father-in-law who had changed wives 5 times. Wilhelmina wants to set a great example as a mother-in-law. Of course, a great mother-in-law is someone who does nothing. The more one intervenes, the more exhausting things become. Doing nothing is best. She had once heard this in a play, and at this moment the wisdom of those words seems undeniable. As she thinks this, a maid enters and informs her that the celebration is about to begin. Urging herself forward, Wilhelmina moves towards the event. At the party, the first person Wilhelmina notices is the Duke. He is younger than she expected. Rather than carrying the air of the head of an ancient family, he seems more like the CEO of a venture company. She had heard that the Leighton family had branched off from the royal family a long time ago, and the Duke's golden hair alone confirms this lineage. This is the first time Wilhelmina and the Duke are meeting. It is ironic, having an official introduction to her own stepson at such an occasion. Even in modern times, recognizing a stepmother younger than oneself is difficult. Yet to her surprise, the moment the Duke sees her, he happily greets her as mother. Wilhelmina is utterly shocked. The Duke smiles, remarking that it is nice to meet her under these circumstances, and introduces himself as Michael Phil Leighton. Wilhelmina, still stunned, states her name as well, but Michael adds Leighton to it for her. He finds it nice to officially meet her. Wilhelmina is bewildered. This is not how a stepmother is usually greeted. The way he speaks reminds her of how a newly transferred student is unexpectedly appointed as class president. Michael, sensing her surprise, apologizes. Given the circumstances, he was unable to meet her earlier. The overwhelming friendliness he exudes, it has been a long time since Wilhelmina has encountered such warmth. She responds aloud that it is all right since he was busy. Michael then adds that he had actually mentioned to Helene that they should go meet her, but Helene had suggested that they give Wilhelmina some time to adjust first. Wilhelmina cannot help but think that such words should be kept to oneself. If they are not careful, this could be interpreted as speaking behind her back. In a situation like this, the safest thing to do is observe the butler's expression, but as always, his face reveals nothing. Adjusting her footing slightly, she is certain that this is a subtle warning not to stir up unnecessary trouble. The new head of the house, politely serving his stepmother, it is obvious how this would appear to subordinates. Even if he has to be mindful of the emperor, Wilhelmina believes he must not relinquish the authority of the head of the family. Michael, still cheerful, expresses his happiness in seeing Wilhelmina looking healthy. He asks if life at the estate has been treating her well. At this point, Wilhelmina can only wonder, does this boy's head have nothing in it but flowers? Wilhelmina assures Michael that she is doing quite well, though he doesn't seem entirely convinced. In the final days leading up to the event, he expresses his concern that her residence is too far from the main estate and suggests that she should move there instead. However, Wilhelmina dismisses the idea without hesitation. She smiles, insisting that she is perfectly fine where she is. The thought of relocating to the estate is unappealing to her, not only because she prefers her independence, but also because she despises the constant need to be mindful of the servants there. What is even worse, though, is the prospect of encountering Helene every single day. The very idea makes her shudder. To her, it would be like living in the headline of a scandalous drama, one where the new mother-in-law moves upstairs, igniting a fierce battle of power and conflict. From the moment Helene sets foot in the same household, it would mark the beginning of an ongoing war of authority. To Wilhelmina, the entire situation seems like the introduction to a dramatic divorce mediation show. And if she were to categorize the roles in this imaginary narrative, she is certain of one thing: she would undoubtedly be cast as the villain. Michael seems prepared to argue his case further, but before he can get another word out, the butler steps in, announcing that the banquet is ready. Wilhelmina is silently impressed by the butler's impeccable timing. Michael calls out to Wilhelmina, telling her to come along with him. She cannot refuse. Today, after all, she has a responsibility: to present herself properly at the banquet. If she is to face Helene, she must make sure she appears composed, graceful, and completely unbothered. As they step into the grand hall, the announcer declares the entrance of Count Cecil of the Lake. The Count greets Michael, who returns the greeting and makes a passing remark about how smooth the journey must have been. The Count assures him that, indeed, the trip was far more comfortable due to the improved roads. Wilhelmina, however, can only sigh inwardly. All she has to do now is stand still like a mannequin and repeat this performance over and over again. No one is actually speaking to her, yet she can feel the weight of their gazes upon her. The nobles in the room are undoubtedly analyzing every aspect of her demeanor. They are likely speculating about Michael's relationship with her, wondering if their seemingly amicable interactions will eventually stir his temper. Some might even be questioning her true identity. Nobles are truly different from ordinary people, she muses. They have an uncanny ability to twist the smallest details into an intricate web of assumptions. She steels herself for the remainder of the evening. Once this exhausting charade is over, she intends to grab a plate of food and retreat to the lounge where she can finally breathe. And maybe she'll scroll some reels. At that moment, the entrance is once again announced, this time for Viscount Milgy and his daughter. Wilhelmina watches as they step into the hall together. She immediately notices something unsettling. Alina's heels are twice as high as they should be. A frown flickers across her face. It is sheer torture for a growing spine to endure such strain. And as if that were not enough, the corset Alina wears is painfully tight, forcing her shoulders into an unnatural posture. The dress itself seems suffocating, emphasizing her frame in a way that Wilhelmina finds completely unnecessary for someone so young. Wilhelmina feels her irritation build. What is the point of dressing a child like this? What is the purpose of forcing her into such discomfort? To make matters worse, Milgy appears utterly displeased with Alina for not walking properly. The sight of it is the last straw. Wilhelmina's patience wears thin as she watches the young girl struggle under the pressure of her father's expectations. Milgy and Alina step forward, bowing to Leighton. Wilhelmina can't help but wonder if Alina is even capable of bowing properly in that corset. And then the inevitable happens. The banquet descends into chaos as Alina suddenly falters. The next scene shifts. Alina jolts awake, finding herself in an unfamiliar room. Anxiety grips her as she realizes what has just transpired. She sees Wilhelmina seated in front of her, watching her carefully. Wilhelmina, calm as ever, tells her that she has been unconscious for a while and asks if she is feeling any better. She informs Alina that she has arranged for a warm pumpkin soup to be prepared for her, asking if she will be able to drink it. Alina, still disoriented, nods. She will drink it. As she takes the first sip, she is immediately comforted by the warmth of the soup. The rich, soft texture coats her mouth, while the sweetness of the honey lingers on her tongue. The light, fragrant aroma drifts up to her nose, adding to the soothing experience. Wilhelmina watches her closely. She is glad that the soup turned out well. After all, they used only the finest quality honey. Alina hesitates for a moment. She is struck by a thought. If she continues eating sweets like this, will she gain weight? She wonders if she should stop. Wilhelmina notices her sudden hesitation and asks why she has stopped eating. Does she not like it? Alina quickly shakes her head, explaining that it isn't that at all. The soup is delicious. She simply doesn't know how to repay Wilhelmina's kindness. She thinks she has had enough. But as soon as the words leave her mouth, realization strikes. She freezes in shock, her own words replaying in her mind. Wilhelmina's expression remains unreadable. She tilts her head slightly, repeating the word aloud. Enough? Her gaze softened, amusement flickering in her eyes. Wilhelmina encourages Alina to eat more, but when she receives no response from her, she sighs in exasperation. Standing up, she walks over to Alina and instructs her to stay still as she begins to untie the corset. Alina, however, insists that she cannot do this, her mind racing with wild thoughts. She ponders what Wilhelmina is even trying to do and wonders if she harbors some kind of secret hobby that she cannot share with others. As Wilhelmina works on the corset, she soon discovers that the dress has a hidden hook, which takes Alina by surprise. In a sudden panic, Alina hurriedly places her hands over her stomach as if to shield it, fearing that without the tight grip of the corset, her stomach will stick out. Wilhelmina, however, always prepared with a solution, calmly assures her that if that happens, they can always adjust the dress from the back, yet Alina refuses to accept such a possibility. She insists that she cannot allow it, for she is not even married yet, and she cannot let her skin be exposed in a place like this. Wilhelmina, however, has different plans. Without hesitation, she drapes a cloak over Alina's shoulders, ensuring that she is properly covered. She then reassures her that no one will be coming here, so she should feel free to drink the rest of the soup. With the constriction around her waist finally loosened, Alina realizes that she does, in fact, feel much more comfortable. In the past, she had even worn her corset while sleeping, but now that she has taken it off, she notices a remarkable difference. Her usual difficulty in breathing has disappeared, her stomach no longer aches, and her waist feels unburdened. Even so, Alina cannot help but feel disheartened. She quietly expresses that a noble lady cannot loosen her corset. She must keep it tight until she is married, as it will make her waist appear slimmer. Wilhelmina, ever practical, dismisses her concerns with ease, insisting that a little looseness will not cause any problems. Tears begin to well up in Alina's eyes as she mutters that if she drinks this soup, she will surely gain weight. But once again, Wilhelmina assures her that she will not. Though Alina desperately wants to deny it, she somehow feels that what Wilhelmina is saying is true. Slowly, she takes another sip of the soup, savoring the taste. Indeed, it is delicious. Wilhelmina, observing the situation, already knows that under the current circumstances, she would not have given Alina any other option. However, she still believes that Alina needs to wear a bigger corset. In response, Alina dejectedly mentions that the one she wears now is the most famous corset available. Wilhelmina, her expression turning grim, remarks that simply copying others will not make someone beautiful. She is not trying to argue about beauty standards, but rather emphasizing that the foundation of beauty lies in being healthy. She then asks Alina if she even knows what she looks like. Alina hesitates, glancing at herself with uncertainty. Has she truly looked strange all this time? She has put so much effort into maintaining her appearance. As she examines herself, she notices that some of the makeup on her chest has started to come off, prompting her to hurriedly say that she needs to fix it. Wilhelmina, however, tells her that this has nothing to do with her makeup. Recently, Wilhelmina has discovered that the younger generation views pale, sun-shy skin as the ultimate symbol of beauty. She then asks Alina outright if her stomach hurts. Looking down, Alina replies that it does not, but Wilhelmina sees through her lie immediately. With unwavering certainty, she points out that if Alina continues wearing such a corset, she will likely develop constipation. Alina reacts as if wounded by Wilhelmina's words and calls out to her in protest. Wilhelmina, unimpressed by her reaction, asks if her words have embarrassed her. She then firmly reminds Alina that what should be even more embarrassing is the fact that she nearly vomited in front of the guests. Alina, though reluctant to admit it, cannot deny that Wilhelmina is right. Wilhelmina sighs and expresses that she understands the desire to be more beautiful than others, but that should never come at the cost of one's health. Alina, still grappling with her own insecurities, hesitantly mentions that even her father has told her she needs to lose weight. At this, Wilhelmina's expression darkens with anger. She demands to know whether Alina intends to marry her father. Taken aback, Alina stammers that, of course, she is going to marry her fiancé. Wilhelmina then pointedly asks if her fiancé prefers thin women. Alina, flustered, indignantly insists that he does not say things like that. Hearing this, Wilhelmina feels somewhat relieved. At the very least, Alina's fiancé appears to think sensibly. She then adds that, in the end, it is Alina who will be living with him, so she has no reason to push herself to such extremes. However, Alina, now frustrated, retorts that there are no larger sizes available at the Tashio boutique. Everyone at the debutante ball had been wearing dresses from Tashio, yet back then, she could not wear one because she had gained weight. Despite this, even after gaining weight, she still ate cake at the debutante ball. Wilhelmina's eyes darken as she gazes at Alina with a look that almost resembles a dark romance hero asking her girl who did this to her. She then asks in a low voice if someone said something to her that day. Alina hesitates for a moment before admitting that everyone had stared at her. They had all whispered among themselves, commenting on how she, a noble lady, was still eating without any shame. Ever since that day, she had tightened her corset night after night, enduring the pain even as her ankles ached from wearing high heels. She wanted nothing more than to erase the unpleasant memories of that night. Even as she acknowledges how childish it might seem, she cannot help but think about how one simple moment of gossip led her to make such a drastic mistake. At the next banquet, she had felt utterly foolish. Wilhelmina listens to all of this and understands just how much pain Alina must be in. She then asks if this is the real reason she refused to drink the soup. Alina, feeling disgraced, admits that eating when she is not hungry makes her feel ashamed. Wilhelmina, however, calmly comments that it is not strange at all. She pours more soup into the bowl and adds that eating is neither strange nor disgraceful. She asks if Alina truly sees eating as such a terrible thing. Alina tries to insist on her beliefs, but Wilhelmina remains firm. She assures her that in this room there is no one else, only the two of them. No one outside can hear their conversation. To Wilhelmina, eating while smiling brightly is never disgraceful, and Alina should not think of herself as disgraceful either. Tears gather in Alina's eyes as she listens. Wilhelmina gently wipes them away and tells her that it is okay. She can eat now. This will be their little secret. Alina slowly lifts the bowl, drinking the warm, delicious soup. Wilhelmina watches her, feeling truly happy to see her smile again. Wilhelmina never imagined that even after being reborn, she would find herself in the role of an instructor. As she looks at Alina, she reflects on how pure relationships during adolescence are far more delicate and burdensome than adult relationships. The weight of emotions in youth carries far more significance than those in adulthood, filled with pure malice, baseless hatred, and misunderstandings that can shape a lifetime. A brief argument between adolescents can turn into a lifelong trauma, scarring them in ways that they may never fully recover from. Wilhelmina understands that merely digging into the wounds of children does not help. It only serves to deepen their pain. She reminds herself that she is an adult and, as such, is not truly in a position to intervene in the complex dynamics of the social circle Alina belongs to. A wounded child does not need advice. What they need is an ally, someone they can trust and rely on. That is the only thing that can help them endure. Realizing that it is almost midnight, Wilhelmina notes that the banquet will soon be coming to an end. Alina, sensing the lateness of the hour, states that she should be heading back. In the end, Wilhelmina has failed to fulfill her promise of returning to the banquet, and is certain that she will be scolded by Helene. As she prepares to leave, Wilhelmina hands her a small package containing honey and herbs that will help with her indigestion. Alina, surprised by the gesture, hesitates before asking Wilhelmina if it would be acceptable for her to visit again, not for the sake of the banquet, but for a personal visit. She asks the question with reluctance, uncertain whether she even has the right to invite herself over. It is obvious how much the nobles must have gossiped about her, and she wonders whether another visit would only cause unnecessary trouble. Just as she is lost in thought, a conversation she once had with Roland suddenly resurfaces in her mind. She remembers him telling her that, as a noble lady, it is essential for her to host a gathering at least once. He had strongly suggested that she consider arranging something, a book club or a tea party, for example, as it would be beneficial for her in the long run. At the time, Wilhelmina had scoffed at the idea, pointing out that she was not particularly fond of books. But Roland had explained that the purpose was not actually to read but to build relationships. When she had asked if he meant making friends, Roland had responded in a deep, serious voice, telling her that what he truly meant was making allies. His expression had been grave when he told her that high society was its own kind of world, one that functioned like a battlefield hidden beneath layers of civility. To survive, one needed allies, not just acquaintances. Wilhelmina, thinking back to that conversation, realizes that she should take action instead of overanalyzing the situation. Turning to Alina, she tells her that she is planning to host a book club, though she is unsure of when it will take place. Alina's eyes widen with excitement at the announcement. She immediately asks if Wilhelmina truly intends to invite her. It is clear that the idea of being the first guest to be invited to Wilhelmina's book club fills her with joy. She rushes off, thrilled at the prospect of their next meeting. Watching her leave, Wilhelmina then tells her that since she was unable to return to the banquet, she will personally inform her father that it was she who insisted on keeping Alina away. That way, her father will not scold her. Internally, Wilhelmina muses that if her father is as politically minded as she suspects, he will be more than happy to have a member of the Duke's family owe him a favor. However, Alina shakes her head and insists that Wilhelmina has helped her, and for that reason she will tell her father the truth. Wilhelmina thinks to herself that she only helped Alina because she was about to throw up. She does not quite understand why something so trivial has made her so happy. Still, seeing how Alina is not overly anxious, Wilhelmina suspects that her father is not as terrible as she had initially thought. Even so, the fact remains that this is a man who allowed his daughter to reach a point where she felt compelled to vomit at a social event. Family relationships in this world are something Wilhelmina has yet to fully grasp. Back at the banquet hall, Wilhelmina calls out to a young boy and asks him where Michael is. The boy informs her that the Duke has gone to the courtyard with some guests and that they are currently having a few drinks there. Wilhelmina sighs, realizing that the second round of drinking is now taking place outside. Nobles are so carefree, she muses, indulging in drinks under the moonlight as if they have no responsibilities. She lets out another sigh, knowing that the Margrave must have arrived by now. It would be best for her to go and greet him. As she steps outside, Wilhelmina begins to regret dismissing her attendants. She does not know her way around the Duke's residence and now finds herself wandering aimlessly. She makes a mental note to be more cautious about such decisions in the future. Just as she is contemplating what to do next, her eyes fall upon a lake in the distance. It is breathtakingly beautiful, the moonlight shimmering on its surface like liquid silver. Unable to resist, she decides to take a closer look. However, as she approaches, she notices that someone is already there. The man standing by the water's edge is large, immensely so. Even with the dim lighting, it is evident that he is a warrior. From his posture to the way he carries himself, everything about him exudes strength and discipline. Judging by his features, he must be around 60 years old. Wilhelmina immediately recalls Alina and her father was the last guest to depart. She thinks back to the banquet and realizes that she does not remember seeing this man there. That means he must be the Margrave. Deciding that this is the perfect opportunity to introduce herself, Wilhelmina prepares to step forward and greet him. But to her surprise, she notices something, or rather someone else. A figure is lurking behind a tree nearby, partially concealed by the shadows. Wilhelmina stiffens, her instincts immediately sharpening. The man hidden behind the tree appears as if he has emerged out of nowhere. His outfit is unusual, completely different from the attire worn by the nobles at the banquet. Even the fabric and color pattern are foreign, resembling something from the eastern regions. Who is he? Wilhelmina's curiosity is piqued, and more importantly, what is he doing here? In the dim glow of the moonlight filtering through the trees, an old man stands beside a younger man clad in knightly attire, his voice carrying a measured curiosity as he inquires if the younger man is truly certain about his decision. The old man reminds him that, after all, he had been looking forward to this meeting. The knightly man, however, remains steadfast in his stance, his tone composed yet firm as he assures the old man that he is fine and that now is simply not the right time. His voice is steady, but there is an underlying weight to his words, a quiet finality that suggests he has already made up his mind. Meanwhile, hidden behind a thick tree trunk, Wilhelmina stands frozen in place, feeling a deep pang of guilt for unintentionally eavesdropping on what appears to be a private conversation. She had not meant to listen in, yet now that she has overheard fragments of their exchange, she finds herself at a loss for what to do. The more she listens, the more she realizes that their discussion does not seem to be of a typical nature, given their attire and the weighty air surrounding them. The old man, his voice tinged with an almost playful exasperation, questions once more if the knightly man truly believes the right time will come and wonders aloud if his reluctance has anything to do with that strange poetry book. At the mention of this, the younger man gives a brief response, denying any such connection, but the old man merely sighs, remarking that, in his experience, the most dangerous people are often those who become obsessed with a single phrase, as this young man seems to be with that damned poetry book. The old man laments how that he had even gone so far as to have it copied, had read it numerous times, and yet still clung to the belief that it was written by someone utterly clueless about love. Wilhelmina, still in her hidden spot, muses over their words. She wonders if this conversation is deeply personal, something between close companions rather than formal associates. Given the knightly man's confident tone from before, it seems odd that they would be speaking of something so sentimental in nature. The thought unsettles her, making her feel as if she is intruding on something she should not bear witness to. Deciding that it would be best to slip away before she is noticed, she carefully turns to leave, only for disaster to strike. A dry tree branch beneath her foot snaps with a sharp crack that pierces the quiet of the night. Both men's heads turn sharply in her direction. Wilhelmina's heart pounds as their gazes land on her, and she inwardly curses her own misfortune. Before she can scramble for an excuse, the old man steps forward, his expression shifting quickly from surprise to recognition. With a warm, hurried greeting, he addresses her directly. He notes that he had been wondering who it might be, only to find that it was none other than Wilhelmina herself. Now fully exposed, Wilhelmina forces herself to maintain her composure despite the lingering awkwardness of having interrupted their conversation. She allows herself a brief moment of sarcastic self-reproach, mentally chastising herself for stumbling into such an awkward situation and leaving herself completely clueless on how to handle it. Nevertheless, she does what is expected of her, offering a formal greeting in return. The old man introduces himself as Count Isnan. Wilhelmina is taken aback by the name, for Count Isnan is no ordinary noble. He is a renowned margrave of the Western Territories, an esteemed figure among swordsmen. His reputation one of both strength and unshakable command. Even standing before him now, she can sense an imposing presence around him, a certain weight to his very being that she has never felt before. Her eyes shift to the knightly man beside him, taking in his now frozen posture. The contrast is striking. Before, he had spoken with unwavering confidence, yet now in her presence, he stands completely still, as though rendered speechless by some unseen force. Wilhelmina's curiosity deepens, but she chooses not to press the matter, instead addressing Count Isnan directly. She apologizes for not having been able to come to him earlier to offer her congratulations, explaining that an urgent matter had come up. Count Isnan waves away her concern with a reassuring smile, telling her that he had already heard about the situation. Given that she had been responsible for overseeing the banquet, it was only natural that she had needed to handle the circumstances as they arose. Wilhelmina feels a small sense of relief at his understanding and offers him her gratitude before finally directing her attention to the man standing beside him. She asks about his identity. Count Isnan, however, gives only a vague response, referring to the knightly man simply as an acquaintance of his. The deliberate evasiveness of his answer does not escape Wilhelmina's notice, and she cannot help but find it suspicious. It seems clear that the Count does not wish to reveal the man's true identity, and for what reason she cannot yet determine. Deciding not to pry further, she instead shifts the topic, mentioning that a drinking gathering is currently being held. Count Isnan acknowledges this with a nod, admitting that while he does not drink, he had received an invitation and had ultimately decided to attend. Wilhelmina, momentarily taken aback, wonders if he dislikes alcohol. However, before she can voice the question, the Count's expression shifts slightly, and, much to her surprise, a faint blush dusts his cheeks. He clarifies that it is not a matter of personal distaste, but rather a request from his wife. She had asked him not to drink, and so he refrains. Wilhelmina finds herself pleasantly amused by this revelation. It is always a rare sight to see a man of such immense strength and authority so utterly devoted to his wife. Yet here he stands, undeniably formidable in stature, and yet softened at the mere mention of his beloved. Their conversation shifts once more as Count Isnan inquires if she intends to attend the inner garden gathering. Wilhelmina shakes her head, explaining that she had only come to see him and to offer her greetings. Now that she has done so, she intends to take her leave. Count Isnan acknowledges this, then mentions that her stepson had been looking for her. Wilhelmina, however, merely offers a knowing smile, remarking that she is well aware of where she is needed. She understands that the inner garden gathering is meant only for the close aides, and that only a true lady of the house should be present, Helene. Count Isnan, ever polite, simply responds with an understanding nod. However, Wilhelmina catches sight of something peculiar. The knightly man beside him suddenly clenches his hand into a fist, and the air around them subtly shifts, as though something unspoken lingers between them. At last, Count Isnan bids her good night, offering to escort her, but Wilhelmina politely declines, stating that she will simply call for an attendant. She wishes him well for the gathering and turns to leave, only for the Count to call out to her one final time. He asks if he may pose a question. She allows it. And then he asks, has she ever been in a romantic relationship before? Wilhelmina is momentarily stunned, completely caught off guard by the unexpected inquiry. A surge of irritation rushes through her as she processes his words, wondering what on earth had compelled him to ask such a thing. She had thought him to be a devoted, loving husband, but now she cannot help but suspect that he is simply attempting to flirt with her. Her voice is sharp with sarcasm as she retorts that she has no interest in married men. Realization dawns upon Count Isnan's face, and he quickly backtracks, hastily clarifying that she has misunderstood. He loves his wife very much, truly, more than anything. Their eyes meet, and for a brief moment, An odd tension lingers between them before he hurriedly steps back, apologizing profusely. Wilhelmina watches as he glances toward the knightly man and sighs, muttering to himself that he had only suspected it before, but now he is certain. The young man is a truly peculiar person. Wilhelmina questions him on what he means, but the Count brushes it off, claiming he was merely speaking to himself. Finally, he asks one last thing, if she had attended an academy. She confirms that she has. The Count then tells her something strange, that if she believes him, there is someone from the academy waiting for her. Wilhelmina is left utterly confused, while the knight armor guy gazes at Wilhelmina. Wilhelmina thinks it sounds like the Count is giving her the classic, "Do you believe in fate?" speech. She tells him she isn't interested in new religions. The Count is shocked and gets embarrassed, clearly not expecting her bluntness. He tells her not to tease him. Wilhelmina, more composed, says she never had any kind of romantic relationship at the academy. She barely had 2 or 3 friends, so romance was never even a passing thought during her school years. After graduation, she even lost contact with those few friends. The Count finds this strange and asks if no one ever confessed to her. Wilhelmina suggests that perhaps he is confusing her with someone else. The Count, however, doubts that someone like her could be mistaken for anyone else, making Wilhelmina wonder if he's subtly calling her strange. She gazes back at the armored man. The Count observes that, from the way she speaks, it seems like someone once got rejected after confessing their love to her. Perhaps it was one-sided. Wilhelmina states that she didn't even receive a confession. The Count finds this even more unbelievable. Wilhelmina gets a little frantic, saying that she also finds it strange. She had always thought she would be at least a little famous, as she was quite confident in herself. This leaves the Count utterly speechless. If Wilhelmina had known back then that she would end up like this, she thinks she would have simply focused on her studies. As she heads back to her room, she wonders if the armored man was watching her the whole time. She questions whether it's just her fantasy. If she were an outsider, she thinks, she would probably react the same way a mother younger than her daughter in appearance. He must be thinking, what kind of drama is this? And thus ended up staring at her. Wilhelmina notices Anna and the child worker sitting at the podium. Upon seeing her, the child rushes forward, clearly worried that she returned alone, which could have been dangerous. Wilhelmina assures the child that they are inside the castle. What could possibly happen here? She asks what they are doing out so late, as their shift ended hours ago. Anna explains that they were worried about her and when she would return. Moraine adds that Anna was concerned she might get hurt. Embarrassed, Anna puts her hand over Moraine's mouth. Wilhelmina can see they were worried the nobles might look down on her. She finds Moraine to be a sweet child. Wilhelmina thanks Anna and tells her not to worry, she is fine. Anna looks truly relieved to hear this. Then Wilhelmina turns to Moraine and asks if she was worried too. Moraine nods and also says that Wilhelmina looks really beautiful today. The evening dress was sent by the main estate. It's so beautiful that words can hardly describe it. The luxurious fabric is dyed to match Wilhelmina's hair color, and the jewels embedded in it, each one, might be worth a former year's salary. Wilhelmina can see that Helene really went all out, and even though Helene probably doesn't approve of her, the fact that she prepared something so fitting for the Duchess speaks to Wilhelmina's place in the family. She says aloud that the dress is truly beautiful, but Moraine insists that the one who is beautiful is Wilhelmina herself. She sparkles like the stars in the sky. Wilhelmina decides such a cute compliment deserves a reward. She adds that Moraine's body must be cold, so they should go inside and have a glass of hot milk before bed. Wilhelmina apologizes to Anna for troubling her, but Anna assures her that she will prepare it. Wilhelmina tells her to make it 3, as she needs some too, which makes Anna truly grateful. The banquet hall was dazzling and the castle beside it grand, but still nothing feels better than home to Wilhelmina. On the other side, the Count is walking. He asks the armored man if he is nervous. The man replies yes, making the Count sigh. A man who never wavered before hundreds of enemies is now struggling to even breathe properly before a single woman. The Count tells him to just remove his helmet and greet her. The armored man says that this isn't how he plans to meet her. The Count is helpless. He doesn't know if he should call it stubbornness or devotion. Regardless of the armored man's circumstances, it seems like Wilhelmina is doing just fine. She doesn't look worn out by her in-laws. If anything, she carries herself like the true lady of the house. The Count says he is supporting her as much as he can, out of gratitude, but reminds the armored man not to overdo it. He knows the man can't stay away for too long. The armored man, removing his helmet, says that he knows and thanks the Count. The Count tells the armored man that if Jake were to see him in this condition, he would be deeply disappointed. The armored man chuckles, saying he didn't really have a choice, he needed to sneak out. The Count asks him what his plan is now and reminds him that he came only because he was invited by Leighton. The armored man replies that he intends to head back, since he came merely to offer his congratulations and not to cause trouble for the Count's family. The Count doubts that Michael would feel the same. The armored man says he will be taking his leave now, and there's no need to see him out. The Count thinks to himself that it's a shame they could have shared a drink, but he supposes he should let the man go. The Count bows and says he understands. Just as the armored man is about to leave, he turns his gaze back and instructs the Count to let him know everything about Wilhelmina's living environment and report it to him in detail. The Count bows in agreement. The next day, Wilhelmina is sitting with John when she asks if he's serious in saying that the hottest trading company right now is Gold Rail. John affirms that it's true, they got everything one could need. Gold Rail is a newly established merchant group that just earned noble status. They cater to both commoners with general goods and nobles with fine items and spices. Wilhelmina agrees to some extent. Even if she is moving to Leighton for now, there's no telling what the future holds for her. But making a fortune with modern science and culture feels like a long shot. She doesn't know the first thing about practical sciences. She asks if he's got any good gossip about Gold Rail. John says there's a girl who sells flour. He mentions she runs a shop for salt and sugar too, and he thinks her name is Jane. He adds that she's quite unique. She's the youngest of the Gold Rail family, but God have mercy, she's bursting with ambition. She comes up with insane marketing schemes to sell flour, or throws tasting events to hook people on sugar, and sugar is really expensive. In the end, the main office even sent someone to shut her events down. She absolutely lost it, one of those hellspawn types, super driven. The spoiled youth from a nouveau-riche family, but it seems she's got some real talent too. Wilhelmina thinks it's perfect. She didn't expect to find someone so skilled this early on. Guess recruiting John really was the right move. She pats him on the head, thinking it truly was a smart decision. Inventing something from scratch is out of the question, so the best move is to take this world's existing technology and merge it with modern conveniences, pitch something along those lines. Wilhelmina decides that she has to recruit Jane no matter what. She gives a key to John and asks him to pass it to Jane. He asks her what it is. She tells him it's a letter, and she wants to have a talk with Jane, not to pry into whether Jane is starting a business or something, but because Wilhelmina knows that first she needs to build solid commercial connections. John wishes her good luck. She pats him again, making him feel like a fuzzy-haired dog. John heads off to take care of the garden. Wilhelmina asks if he'd like her to walk with him. He asks where she's headed. She tells him she needs to meet the Duchess. John is utterly shocked, but she assures him that it's all right. She knows that if Helene is requesting a meeting this early in the morning, it must be something important. But Wilhelmina already knows what this is going to be about. It will be about the incident at the banquet, about how she skipped the banquet to take care of the Viscount's daughter. Wilhelmina is sure Helene will have plenty to say about it. But honestly, Wilhelmina herself wants to take the heat. That way, the gossip about Elena will cool down. All rumors need is a new target, and for a young Viscount's daughter who hasn't even built up a reputation or social connections yet, a scandal like this could wreck any potential marriage prospects. But if people shift their focus to Wilhelmina, someone even younger than her own daughter-in-law, a widowed duchess of all things, then all eyes will be on her, and the Elena incident will be buried. The girl wouldn't have to suffer because of it. Wilhelmina resolves to simply go and apologize to Helene if she ends up getting upset. As the door opens, Wilhelmina sees that Duke Michael is there too. He gets up, glad to see Wilhelmina, and tells Helene to relax. After all, they're not here to fight. He's happy to see that the three of them are in the same room. He asks Wilhelmina what kind of tea she'd like, saying he'll prepare it himself. The Duke, serving tea to the fake lady of the house, while his wife glares at her with dangerous intent. Wilhelmina now sees that she wasn't wrong when she thought that Michael truly lives in a fantasy. She remembers her student once telling her that when it comes to real-life regression, the real threat isn't even the villainous in romance fantasies or web comedies. The most dangerous characters are the goddamn oblivious protagonists. And here Michael is, happily serving tea to Wilhelmina. When Wilhelmina first meets Michael at the celebration, even though he outwardly acts like a fool, she secretly suspects he might have a dark side. But looking at him now, she thinks perhaps he truly is genuine. He lacks tact, is overly optimistic, and annoyingly righteous. He doesn't seem to understand what it feels like to be a spineless husband who takes his mother-in-law's side in front of his own wife. This entire situation perplexes her. Wilhelmina finally speaks, acknowledging that she was called. Mikhail explains that he thought it would be good for the three of them to talk together. However, Wilhelmina believes the question was meant for Helene. Mikhail clarifies that they're going to go to the detached house. Internally, Wilhelmina wants him to stop provoking Helene any further. She says out loud that there's no need for them to come to the detached house since there is something they want to say, so it's better for her to come here instead. Mikhail wonders aloud if that's really so, and Wilhelmina is utterly stunned that he actually said that. She notices that Helene's expression softens just a little. Wilhelmina tells them that if it's not urgent, they can also use letters, suggesting that the two of them seem busy. Mikhail, with full optimistic energy, says that they can't just do that. After all, they are a family. He wonders if they should have tea once a week because a family gathering is necessary, at least once a week. Wilhelmina feels like she's going blind from all the light shining out of him. Helene then says to Mikhail that there's something she would like to discuss with Wilhelmina. Mikhail understands that he needs to step aside. He says he'll give them space so they can talk comfortably. Helene sighs and speaks, saying she heard about the Lady of the Milgy Baron family. Wilhelmina braces herself. It's here as expected. She saw it coming. She says that it was just a small commotion, but Helene scoffs, asking if that's the reason she didn't attend the Margrave's celebration. Wilhelmina thinks to herself that although she waited until the entrance, since she didn't offer congratulations in person, it was as good as not attending. Helene hands her a letter. Wilhelmina notes that the deal is not broken. Helene tells her that the Cairn daughter has sent the letter of gratitude, which means its contents have not been checked. Wilhelmina had thought that Helene would have censored such a letter, but as expected, she did not. Helene tells her that it was an excellent response and remarks that since it was the first banquet after her debutante, if she had made a mistake at the celebration, it would have left a major stain on her reputation. However, Helene also mentions that the Duchess's absence from the celebration was a misfortune. Mikhail is about to interrupt, but Wilhelmina quickly stops him, saying that Helene hasn't finished speaking yet. Helene continues and says that she would like to entrust Wilhelmina with the next celebration as the managing hostess. Wilhelmina wonders what the next celebration is. Helene informs her that the previous celebration was for the Margrave, and the next one is for the soldiers of the Margrave, including the knights stationed at the border. Wilhelmina understands that her absence from the Margrave's celebration may have been seen as disrespectful to the Margrave's soldiers, so this is a chance to make up for it. Although it's clearly a cover-up, it's also an opportunity to silence the gossip circulating through society. It's a story that won't give them a good reputation, so it's hard to refuse. Wilhelmina says that she will do it. Helene tells her that the venue and the budget have already been decided, so she will send her the schedule. Wilhelmina is about to say something, but Mikhail interjects once again, asking if they should have tea now. This makes her lose all strength, but Mikhail insists on having some tea. Helene says that she has prepared some good herbal tea and asks Wilhelmina to have it before she goes. Mikhail tells them to stay seated and that he will serve them, which makes Wilhelmina wonder how someone with such a personality can lead a duchy. Mikhail says to Wilhelmina that he knows she is enjoying the tea. No matter how excellent he may be, Mikhail is still the head of the family. Looking at his blatantly optimistic face, Wilhelmina, for the first time, feels unsettled about the future of the duchy, something she had never been concerned about before. But she remembers one of her students telling her that the Proctor of an Abang is usually overpowered by default, and the Abang troublemakers are always a little different from the previous generation. Mikhail is highly praised by the servants, so that lovely personality must have been created out of necessity. There's a knock on the door. Mikhail asks who it is and gives permission to enter. It's the butler. He tells Mikhail that he's sorry, but there's a matter that needs his attention. Mikhail apologizes to the women and says that he has to go, wishing Wilhelmina to have fun in his place. He waves at Helene and says he will come back to her after finishing his work. Wilhelmina tells Helene that she has now finished the tea, so she will be going. But Helene stops her, saying that Roland was praising Wilhelmina a lot. Wilhelmina is embarrassed after all. She made a lot of clumsy mistakes. Helene says that Roland mentioned that although Wilhelmina is a little inexperienced in etiquette, her heart is as wonderful as her manners. Wilhelmina feels genuinely happy, wondering if the ginger tea was really that good, and considers whether she should go get some more. Helene says to her that this is enough and hopes that Wilhelmina will keep this conduct without becoming arrogant in the future. Wilhelmina can clearly see it was an absolute sarcasm, but to Wilhelmina, it doesn't feel bad. Helene thinks that Wilhelmina no longer needs to be polite after all. Mikhail is not around anymore. This thought makes Wilhelmina wonder if Helene wants her to be angry. But instead, Wilhelmina simply laughs. She finds this almost cute. It's obvious what the older woman is thinking, pretending not to hate her while clearly doing so. In this world, Wilhelmina may be living inside a young body, but like any modern person without absolute status, she has seen the nature of humans. She doesn't particularly care if Helene dislikes her openly. In fact, she murmurs aloud that anyone would be lucky to have a mother-in-law like Helene. She tells Helene that she will try to become a non-arrogant duchess, since conflicts between in-laws only disturb household peace. With that, she takes her leave. 2 more important matters are added to her to-do list before the year-end celebration. First, to make contact with Jane, the merchant of gold rail. Second, to ensure the success of the Knights and Soldiers celebration. But she isn't confident in either, so she decides to focus on what is in front of her, and that is Jane. Jane greets Wilhelmina, who returns the greeting and tells her to take a seat. She has also prepared some tea for Jane, given the cold weather, and then dismisses Anna. As Anna is leaving, she bumps into a tall man. Wilhelmina glances at them, curious about who he is. Anna apologizes quickly and tells the man to leave while avoiding Wilhelmina's gaze. Wilhelmina wonders whether her eyes just met with this man's or if she's imagining things. Jane notices and asks if Wilhelmina is surprised. She apologizes, explaining that the man is her internal employee and that she should have told him to wait elsewhere. Wilhelmina casually says that it's fine. Jane takes a sip of the tea and is immediately struck by a unique taste. Wilhelmina tells her that it's good for the cold and asks if it's her first time drinking it. Jane responds that the flavor is indeed unique. Wilhelmina heard that ginger is quite expensive. Jane is the first to speak next. She says she has heard that Wilhelmina wants to propose a business plan and tells her that gold rail is always ready. But she adds that she is only a low-ranking subordinate and worries that she may not be able to handle a duchess consort's expectations or insight. Wilhelmina immediately senses the roundabout rejection. Jane is trying to say that they don't want the hassle that comes with dealing with nobility. Wilhelmina calmly tells her that she seems to have misunderstood something. She isn't there to propose a partnership. She wants to invest in her business. In both this world and the previous one, starting a business is nothing more than a gamble, almost like buying a lottery ticket. She's not the merchant type, but an investor by nature. Jane then asks Wilhelmina if she even knows what kind of work she does. Wilhelmina replies that she deals in grain and seasonings. A grain shop isn't unprofitable, but unlike stores that deal in jewelry, fabrics, or gems, its revenues are steady rather than booming. One can earn money consistently, but becoming truly rich through it is nearly impossible. Still, Jane has tried to break that limit through all sorts of unusual strategies: advertisements, regional taste surveys, inviting chefs to create sugar sculptures, and selling homemade seasonings. Her marketing is ahead of its time. The only problem is that no matter how brilliant the strategy is, targeting commoners with limited spending power won't yield strong results. Wilhelmina tells Jane that she has been secretly supplying flour at low prices to John and other orphans, and thinking of that kindness, she wants to make a small investment. But she emphasizes that this is an investment, not a sponsorship. She may hold some affection toward Gold Rail, but their relationship is to remain strictly business. Jane understands and says that she will do her best to meet Wilhelmina's expectations. Wilhelmina knows that no merchant would refuse a fund where the investor does not interfere in their business. She assures Jane that she doesn't expect large profits from the start, as long as the principal isn't damaged. That's enough. Jane agrees, pointing out that this is obvious. After all, breaking the principal is a crime. Wilhelmina raises an eyebrow. She hadn't expected there to be such a law. Jane explains that when a merchant receives investment from a noble, they must sign a pledge not to damage the principal. If they do, not only will they face imprisonment, but the law also enforces collective punishment. If they have no assets, the debt passes to their descendants. Entire families are sent to prison and branded for life, forced into labor. It's practically a revival of the days of the Roman Empire. Wilhelmina wonders aloud whether this doesn't make cash flow too rigid. Jane explains that this is why trade businesses that receive large investments are often considered life or death gambles. Wilhelmina asks if they don't even conduct proper audits of the ledgers. If that's the case, then creative accounting would be possible, she thinks. Jane, curious, asks what creative accounting is. Wilhelmina tells her that it refers to manipulating financial performance to gain benefits. Jane now fully realizes Wilhelmina is no ordinary noblewoman. Wilhelmina, a noble with an unusual charm, is in the end still just a young aristocrat. Jane doesn't truly intend to get entangled with nobles or the aftermath that often comes with them. She figures this is just a way to humor Wilhelmina a little before stepping away. Her only plan is to retrieve her investment and return the principal amount later. But the more Jane observes, the more she realizes that Wilhelmina is quite sharp, manipulating a company's financial troubles to gain unfair profits. Wilhelmina explains to her that recognition accounting isn't the only strategy at play. There's also something called reverse creative accounting. Jane asks if that means deliberately lowering performance, though she worries it would make it harder to secure investment. Wilhelmina responds that it's not about truly lowering performance, but rather about presenting a steady, gradual growth. She decides to explain it with an example. She asked Jane to imagine sugar cubes representing profits, with each layer of sugar stacked up symbolizing a year. Both businesses make the same total amount over 4 years, 10 units per year. Then she asks which business Jane would invest in, the one that shows steady growth of 1, 2, 3, 4, or the one that fluctuates with a pattern of 2, 3, 2, 3. Jane answers that she would choose the one with steady growth, finding the inconsistent pattern unreliable. Wilhelmina nods and then challenges her. What if the actual earnings were 2, 3, 2, 3, and the 1, 2, 3, 4 figures were the falsified records? This revelation makes Jane flinch. Wilhelmina knows that anyone looking at the figures would invest in the one that shows reliable growth. That's exactly why the data is manipulated. But of course, there's more to it than just this simple trick. They blend both creative and reverse accounting together. Jane begins to understand. This is how great businesses always appear flawless. They secure funding for every venture they touch, handsomely and with ease. She wonders aloud what happens if they fail. Won't they be labeled frauds? Wilhelmina points out that it's a gamble. They bet everything, hoping they can pay it back someday by hitting it big. And if they sell the companies, they can even keep jewel books. Jane thanks her for the insight and then asks what exactly a shell company is. Wilhelmina tells her it's a business that exists only in name. She's curious if Jane hasn't heard of them, subsidiaries that are oriented to appear as legitimate companies, but have nothing real behind them. Jane now sees clearly that she's too naive, and Wilhelmina is the real deal. Outside, ready to depart, Jane thanks Wilhelmina again for sharing such fascinating knowledge and asks if it would be all right to come back for another conversation. Wilhelmina answers softly that she may, and Jane says she will be visiting more often now. But Wilhelmina believes she's the one who received more information here. Still, it's time for her to tend to the rest of her schedule. It is remarkably cold, making Wilhelmina briefly wish to go out, but managing a banquet isn't something that can be done from home. Suddenly, someone asks, "Why not?" Wilhelmina turns with a slight smile and sees that it's Anna, the maid. The man tells her that the horses have belonged to the master, so they can't just be taken out. Anna insists it's not appropriate, even if Wilhelmina is just staying within the estate. Wilhelmina heads toward them and asks what's wrong. Anna apologizes and explains she was only trying to borrow a horse. Another servant explains that the horses were cherished by the late Duke, and each of them is as valuable as a good mansion. If someone truly wants to use them, they must get Michael's permission. Wilhelmina feels like a mother having to ask her son for permission. It's ridiculous. This proves that they still don't truly see her as the lady of the duchy. Of course, they won't openly insult her, but this behavior speaks volumes. She declares she has no choice but to walk, which makes Anna visibly worried. Wilhelmina gently pats her and asks one of the men to call a carriage instead. The man assures her he'll bring the finest one available. Anna is still worried. Taking the carriage might damage Wilhelmina's reputation. But Wilhelmina knows that this is like a billionaire's wife taking a taxi simply because she doesn't have her own car at the moment. She assures Anna it's fine. After all, she's just stepping outside for a bit. Who will even notice? People matter more than reputation, she says, though in truth she scoffs inwardly. She still doesn't understand why the horses are kept at the annex when she can't even use it. She thinks she should contact Helene and have the stables removed from here altogether. This thought makes the man truly worried. She tells him he can relocate the stables to the main building, and she'll assign him another task. Wilhelmina is trying to offer some convenience to the servants of the annex, and that's only possible because they see her as the madam of the house, but just because she shows goodwill doesn't mean they can overstep their boundaries. The worried man asks about taking the white horse instead. She asks him whose horse that is. He replies that technically, all the horses belong to the late Duke. Anna tells Wilhelmina that the white one is the oldest and cheapest of the bunch. Wilhelmina sees that this is deliberate. She didn't want to be disrespectful, nor did she want to cause trouble, but she's being subtly mocked. The servant tells her that if something were to happen to the horse, his life would be in danger. Wilhelmina smiles faintly and says she understands, so she decides to assign him somewhere without such risk. Seeing him tremble like this, she advises him to relax. It's not like she told him to go to prison. He calls out to her again, but Wilhelmina tells him to lower his voice. Refusing to bring a horse is one thing, but defying your master is a far greater offense. She hopes he knows this. He starts to sweat, and Wilhelmina leaves. Anna tells her that the man didn't even show up at the roll call, and since his word alone stands, no one can question him, even if he's just napping. Normally, being a stable hand is a tough job, and if he's sent to the main building, he'll likely be worked to the bone. Wilhelmina asks Anna if sending him back to the main building would be too harsh. Anna says not at all. If anything, it's an incredible idea. Wilhelmina hugs her coat tighter. Today's chill is biting, but she can still feel the warmth radiating from it. She's sure Anna kept it by the fire before bringing it to her. It's a small but heartfelt gesture, and she feels a sense of relief. Anna smiles and says she is the best. As the two of them walk together, Wilhelmina is glad she hasn't disappointed Anna. Wilhelmina and Anna are walking together when they suddenly hear a commotion nearby. Some people appear to be wrestling. Curious, Wilhelmina turns her gaze toward the source of the noise and sees a group of men with frames carved like statues, bodies glistening with sweat under the sunlight. She finds herself momentarily flustered by the sight. Anna, walking beside her, notices her reaction and quickly tries to shield Wilhelmina's view, flustered in turn, urging her not to look as it is indecent. As Wilhelmina gently tries to remove Anna's hands from her eyes, she notices something. Anna's hands are rough and worn. The thought crosses her mind that she should make a good hand cream for Anna. At the same time, she speaks aloud, asking if it's really that strange to see men taking off their shirts while training. She adds that this is a training ground, not indoors, and that they aren't in a place where such things are prohibited. The men themselves don't seem to be bothered by it either, so why should she? Anna, visibly embarrassed, confirms that it's true. Wilhelmina replies that she knows and admits that it's a great view, which makes Anna even more flustered. Wilhelmina has always thought of knights and soldiers as simply large and bulky, but looking now, she realizes that their physiques vary widely. It becomes clear to her that fighting isn't just about size. It's also about skill. Suddenly, a voice calls out to her it's the Count, asking what brings her here. Wilhelmina replies that it has been a long time, and she thought she would visit. The Count quickly shouts to his men to clean up and put their shirts back on, reminding them that they have a guest present. But even so, he can clearly see that Wilhelmina doesn't particularly mind the shirtless scene. Perhaps she's enjoying it more than expected. Later, at the inn, the Count finally understands that Wilhelmina's visit isn't just casual. She's here to ask what kind of banquet celebration would be best for the soldiers. She tells him that if there are any requests, she'll try to accommodate them as much as possible. The Count thinks for a moment and replies that just having good food and drinks will be enough to make the men happy. He adds that it might be difficult for them to enjoy a banquet that includes formal balls or plays. Those aren't really things the soldiers are interested in anyway. Wilhelmina, puzzled, asks if there really is no particular food they might be looking forward to. The Count is unable to think of anything specific, only mentioning that the men generally prefer barbecue over fancy dishes like steak. And since he himself doesn't drink alcohol, he can't offer much insight into drinks either. Wilhelmina sighs, realizing that this isn't going to be easy at all. The Count, however, adds that he can summon someone who might be of help. He points that person's manner of speaking may be blunt. Anna is genuinely impressed to see that the Count isn't simply sending someone else in his stead, he's going himself to get that person. Then someone approaches and tells them that they heard she had been looking for them. It's a female knight. Anna blurts it out loud before Wilhelmina can stop her, making her immediately reach out to halt Anna from saying more. The knight steps forward and introduces herself as Nada, bowing directly in front of Wilhelmina. Nada explains to Wilhelmina that the commander had to attend an urgent meeting, so he came in their place to understand the arrangements and relay the message. Wilhelmina listens with understanding, nodding, and gestures for Nada to stand at ease. She apologizes on Anna's behalf for the earlier confusion. Anna, flustered, also bows her head and apologizes sincerely. She explains that Nada looked so pretty that she mistook him for a woman at first glance. Nada, however, doesn't seem bothered by the mix-up. He says that it's his own fault for not cutting his hair short despite his duties.